Hey, gun people. Evidently, I'm missing some of these interviews and cross-examinations, and I don't know where they're at. Somebody sent me a copy of this one, so I never did the direct examination of Ryan and his cross. So we're gonna do that now. Let's see what he has to say. What the lying DA is gonna try to manipulate.
It was Lukowski.
Who had shot Mr. Grosskreutz?
Yeah, because he was already there.
After you dealt with Mr. Grosskreutz, what did you do next?
I ran over to Anthony Huber.
Tell us about that.
He was laying kind of slumped over in the gutter a little bit there in the street. There were a couple of protesters kind of around him. When I ran up on him, they ran off. I started to roll him over, check on him, put my hand on his neck to see if there was a pulse or whatnot, and didn't feel one, but it was really just like a split-second check, and then a Bearcat pulled up next.
When you say Bearcat, you mean one of the armored law enforcement vehicles? And what, if anything, did those folks do?
They climbed out. They told me they were going to take him, so I kind of gathered up his stuff that was laying on the ground, put it on him, helped him load him up in there.
What did you do next?
I continued south.
Now, I know you described what you've done so far with Mr. Huber lying there. Did Mr. Huber say anything?
Mr. Huber was deceased, as far as I'm aware.
So at the moment you came upon his body, he was already dead?
So far as I know, yes.
And you said you continued south after that?
Correct.
Where did you go?
I went to the 63rd Street location.
What did you find when you were there?
On the way down, I heard protesters saying somebody else had been shot down there, and I could hear shooting going on at the 63rd Street location, or thereabouts.
What did you do once you got to the 63rd location?
Once I got there, I had somehow on the run picked up a couple of folks associated with the protest who were armed as well. Mr. Lukowski came in not too soon after that. Because you could hear the shooting coming from this area over here. And there were protesters kind of like huddled over into here.
I just want to make a record, Mr. Balch, because we need to be able to have everything typed in. So if I could just describe what you've just shown us, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think you had pointed the pointer at the 63rd Street area in the block west of Sheridan Road between there and, is that 10th Avenue? Between Sheridan and 10th Avenue. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And I know you indicated there was an area where, did you say there were gunshots that you heard coming from?
Yes.
Can you again point so I can make sure I am, okay. You're describing the area that is sort of the west half of the block between Sheridan and 10th Avenue along 63rd on the north side of 63rd. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And you indicated you heard some gunshots from that area?
Yes.
Do you remember how many?
There were quite a few.
Did you see anybody who was doing the shooting?
I didn't visually see anybody shooting, but once we moved into this area right next to the building, I kind of popped around into those cars. There were like 2 or 3 cars over in there. And
Experienced prosecutors will always fix the record because they've been caught with their pants down on an appeal. So inexperienced cops that testify a lot understand that the record, you can't use things like this area and point to things, and you have to describe it. So if somebody is reading later without the benefit of seeing, see, we're getting this on video, but most trials aren't videotaped. So if we're just reading the transcript, we have to know what he was taking. Otherwise, it's hard to evaluate if this becomes a critical issue or a part of an appeal. The appellate courts have to be able to figure out what he was pointing at, what he's talking about. And that's why you'll see experienced prosecutors clean that up, or you'll see good people who that's testified a while, they'll always make sure and explain those things. So if somebody's reading it later, they can still see. It's a hard thing to get used to, but after you get called out so many times, you start kind of realizing it, and that's why this prosecutor's picking this up.
it looked like this building right here was where it was coming from. But
see, if you read, it looks like this building right here, you'd be saying, what building's he talking about? What do you mean this building? What's he pointing at? And that's why a lot of times you have to... Now, if inexperienced prosecutors miss that, sometimes the judges will say, you need to clear up what he was doing because that's not going to read well on the record. And that's what they're talking about for an appeal or somebody reading the transcripts later.
there are also shots coming from further back.
And if I could just please make a record of all the things you just described. You indicated that you were in the car source lot near the building on the car source lot and kind of looked around it. Is that right?
Correct.
Would that have been along sort of the south of that building looking west?
Would have been in the south looking down to the west, correct.
And you indicated that you saw something, you described a building, and I think that building was at the southwest corner of 10th Avenue.
There was somebody standing in the second floor window, and they looked to be holding a gun. To get a better look, I kind of moved out into the cars and faced in that direction. As soon as the person in the window saw me, they ducked around the corner. And then bullets started coming from the west and started hitting the car that I was hiding behind.
The person you saw in the window, is this a window of a...
So he was getting shot at, taking fire from a high point, a high location, a position of advantage, and the cops were explaining this area has a civil unrest area. Really, it's funny how when Kyle is defending his life and using self-defense, it's civil unrest. But the cop testified when he pepper sprayed Kyle for coming over with his hands up, that he had been around a whole bunch of people with guns all night. There was more people with guns than without guns. It was like a war zone. There were shots going off everywhere. So when the cop is explaining his fear, it's like a war zone and there's shots going off and everybody's armed. But when Kyle is defending himself from being attacked, it was civil unrest and nobody was armed. And this little weasel DA is saying, and he didn't have a gun, right? When he shot Rosenbaum, and he didn't have a bat, and he didn't have a knife, right? He wasn't armed. He wants to make all that, but when the cop explains it, it's a war zone. I mean, hopefully the jury picks this up, but this is where your defense, it's their job to point that out and to make sure the jury hears that.
A house?
It looks like a house, yes.
This is someone inside a house holding a firearm.
They may or may not have been.
And then bullets came from the west and hit the vehicle that was near you?
Correct.
Did any of those hit you?
No.
What did you do as a result of that?
One of the folks associated with the protest was behind the car with me. I told him to get behind the car source building, and we scooted around behind the building real quick.
What happened then?
That point, there was a white car that had caught on fire. The gas tank went off on it. Kind of poked their heads back around. By that time, SWAT was directly behind the building from car source. And they're like, hey, somebody's over here shooting, get the fuck back around. So we just stayed over there.
This is after everything relevance. Searching for the relevance, Mr. Speaker.
That's fine. Let me skip ahead for a moment. Can we show exhibit number 13?
So I think the objection, you didn't hear it, but I'm just guessing from being in there, is that he was editorializing and he was just going off and he wasn't asking a direct answer to a question. So I think part of the thing was, Your Honor, he's letting him just run off on different topics. What's the question? And is there a specific question that he wants an answer to? Now, of course, the defense isn't going to do that because he just let him tell a story, but he doesn't want him to say something that may hurt his client, whatever. To me, I don't think he's hurting his client. I'm not sure I would have objected personally. He was describing an area of chaos, cars blowing up, shots being fired. He was making it better on why my client's fear and his jeopardy was such in danger. So I would have probably let him go on. So I'm not sure what his objection was.
At the 2140 mark, please. You had testified that when you went down to the 63rd Street location, you saw that plastic bag on the ground. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to have an image of that up on the screen, and I'd like you to take a look at that when it's ready here.
Which the plastic bag we've never seen. I don't know if they didn't seize it or it got lost or the cops didn't know it was part of the investigation. Why don't we have the plastic bag in evidence and what the pills that were in the plastic bag and if the bottle was empty or frozen or had rocks in it? Why don't we have that plastic bag? Because the cops did a shitty job.
Is this at the 2140 mark?
Well, if you look at the
Yes, that is a car fire, but there's more than just a car fire going on here. All right, guys, it looks like there's an interview going on. We're going to see if we can squeeze in on this.
I'm trying to get us to...
Sam's mixed up there. We're going to play a little bit of that video here. I'd like you to take a look at it.
He was actually at the right point you told him, so you messed up. But attorneys can't say they mess up because they're perfect.
Good, please. Thanks.
All right, guys, so here's what we got going on. We are not trying to spook anyone. We're going to move in. It looks like...
Okay, just play the video, please. Thanks. Mr. Balch, there's an object on the ground on the left side of this view screen. Do you see that object?
Yes.
Can you identify that for us?
That's the plastic bag that I picked up to take a look at.
That's the one that Mr. Rosenbaum threw. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, so he picked it up and looked at it. So maybe he's going to say what was in it.
A couple more things finally.
Oh,
After
shit, he didn't ask him. You picked up the bag. What was in it? Why did you pick it up? Why did you leave it there? How did you know he threw it? I mean, this guy doesn't look like he's paying attention, but hopefully he's like chewing at the bit to get on here saying, dude, you picked up a key piece of evidence. What was in it? Was it heavy? Did you see any pills? Did you see any names that identified anybody? I mean, they just totally blew over that. I can't believe that.
all is said and done here, you stayed at this location and spoke to some individuals who were from the media. Is that fair to say?
And we kind of got ambushed by them.
Well, make it sound like they were trying to attack you. They came up and were...
Yeah, they came up out of nowhere, and we weren't expecting them.
When you say we, who was with you?
Jason Lekowski was with me.
When these folks asked you your name, what did you tell them?
I gave them a false name of Thomas Craig
Why did you do that?
to protect my identity so that I could get out of there and figure out what was going on.
There were folks there that showed you video of what had happened that night.
Yes.
In those view screens, were you able to see the defendant?
One of the live streamers did show me a picture of the defendant when he was laying on the ground, being struck on the head, I believe, when he fired his weapon.
From that,
See, that's a good witness. He slid in being struck in the head when he was on the ground. That's what you want in. I mean, he could have really taken this. Yes, he did show me the pennant. That was when Kyle was being attacked by several people. One guy was swinging a skateboard at him, and he was on the ground defenseless, where I think he ended up firing his gun to defend himself and protect his gun. Man, that would have been a perfect statement for the jury to hear. If you're ever on the witness stand, you need to make sure, if you get an opportunity to explain something the way it happened, you got to get it out. Because if you just get up there and become a robot, which is what they want you to do, just answer my questions. Don't elaborate. Just answer yes or no. Don't. They always want you to just shut up because they only want their facts. They don't want the truth coming out. I got that from prosecutors all the time. Man, you elaborate too much. You say things that you don't need to say. I only want to get this fact out, and I don't want the jury to hear anything else from you. So just answer this. And it used to irritate me because I knew they were manipulating the jury. It's bullshit. But whatever.
were you able to identify that that was someone that you had been with
Yes.
that evening? Did you admit that?
To them, no.
In fact, when they confronted you on it and accused you of knowing exactly who that was, you lied to them and told them you did not, correct?
Correct.
And when I discussed this with you, you gave me the explanation that because you were concerned for your safety at that time?
Yeah, we were surrounded by several people, and there were groups.
See, now the prosecution's kind of make this guy out, we can't trust you, you're lying to the media. So this guy really needs to make sure that, look, this was a chaotic scene. They were against people that were there to protect property or to stop the looting or to put out fires. We were there trying to be community supporters, and the rioters didn't like us, and I didn't want to say on camera and give them something, so as soon as the cameras left, I got attacked, or they knew who I was, or they would try to track me down. It was none of the press's business what I was telling them. I wasn't in any official capacity to where I was giving a press conference on facts of anything. I was simply, what I said, ambushed. They caught us, they surrounded us, they asked us questions. I gave them some BS answers just to get the hell out of there. I didn't really care what I was saying or what they wanted to hear. I wanted to disengage and get out of there. That would paint a clearer picture. I'm not sure if he's going to make that clear.
Groups of them milling around us.
Safety at that time?
Yeah, we were surrounded by several people, and there were groups of them milling around us as well.
At that moment that you lied about knowing the defendant,
Notice he's saying lied now. He's trying to discredit this guy because he was with Kyle. He had a gun. He was part of the militia. You get the image that I'm painting here, jury? These guys are all the same.
you still had your AR-15, correct?
Correct.
And your Glock.
No, I didn't have the Glock at this time.
And Mr. Lekowski was with you.
Yes.
Was he armed?
Yes.
Were there police cars nearby?
Further down the street from us, yes, but they were dealing with the shootings and whatnot.
Once you were in
So now he's trying to say that you really weren't scared. Why when you lied? You were just lying because you're a liar and we shouldn't believe you because you're just like Kyle. You're one of those militia people.
informed that the defendant was the one who had been involved in these shootings, was a suspect, did you approach the police that night and tell them about your information?
No.
I have nothing further.
You, Mr.
There's no requirement for anybody to report a crime. There's no requirement that he had to do that. You can imply that he was trying to cover up or whatever, but there's no requirement. And it was a chaotic. Hopefully the defense will say, did you see the video where my client tried to approach the police with his hands up and he got pepper sprayed? Is that why maybe you didn't feel to need to run? Your objection, Your Honor. We don't know if you saw it. Whatever. I'd still get it out for the freaking jury because that place was chaotic. And anybody that was going to walk up to the police and try to report something was probably going to get pepper sprays, shot with a bullet, or tased. The cops didn't want anybody approaching them or being around because they were letting the city burn. And now they come in trying to play the hero that it was a war zone, but those mean people that were trying to protect the community are the bad guys, and the poor looters and criminals that got shot are somehow poor, helpless people, good people of society that we need to spend millions of tax dollars defending them. Outrageous trial.
Just 1 second. Does anybody need a break? Go ahead.
Broad question. That evening, while you were out on patrol with my client Kyle Rittenhouse, you're armed, he's armed,
This is correct.
and you went by law enforcement on numerous occasions.
Yes.
Did anybody ever tell you you can't be out there with these weapons?
No.
Did anybody ever question you or him about your age?
No.
You were interviewed several days after this by the FBI, correct?
Correct.
And they specifically asked you about that bag, correct?
Wow, man, he gave an interview to the FBI. That's still kind of just, you people need to realize, man, you will never get credits or help yourself or anyone else by cooperating with that rogue federal KGB organization. I mean, I just can't believe people that are Second Amendment savvy and carry a gun think that talking to the FBI is a good thing.
Correct.
And reading from the report, you told them that bag, correct?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
And they specifically asked you about that bag, correct?
Correct.
And reading from the report, you told them you examined the bag quickly and observed an ammonia mixture and a small bleach bottle, correct?
Correct.
Oh, now I know why the prosecution didn't ask. See, if you're sitting on a jury, you need to realize when the defense makes a point like this, it's like he's been lying to us. That defense is saying he had an empty bottle and he was just throwing a bag and there wasn't nothing and the bottle of water was empty. And he has been painting a picture that this guy was some innocent person not doing anything wrong the entire time. And now he finds a bleach mixture of shit in the bag. And the prosecution has never felt the need to tell the jury about this. Wow. Good job by the defense, because I think I mentioned that earlier, but that's a key point.
Is that what you observed quickly and observed an ammonia mixture and a small bleach bottle, correct?
Correct.
Is that what you observed?
That's what I thought I'd observed at the time.
By smell?
I didn't check the smell.
Okay. What made you think it was ammonia?
Because of what we'd been hit with earlier in the night.
And when the bomb had been hit earlier in the night?
Okay, so because he asked the question, did you smell it? And he said no. That's where in trial tactics, you just gave the defense a door that he can come back now. Because if the defense is good or the prosecution is good, they're going to come back now after the defense has finished questioning him, because the defense opened the door. The prosecution is going to come back now and go, when you said it was bleach, how did you know it was bleach? You said you didn't smell it, right? Was it labeled bleach? No. So it could have been water. Yes. So you don't know it's bleach. You're just assuming it's bleach. So he's going to kind of blow that out of the water a little bit.
Mr. Rosenbaum was there with that bag, correct?
Yes.
You testified that
he should be asking, was there an empty bottle in there? Because we've heard testimony earlier that the bag contained some pill bottles and an empty bottle of water. Did you see an empty bottle of water? No. What does that do? That tells you that through the night, the contents of that bag changed. So we don't know if it had rocks or frozen water bottles or whatever. It also implies that this client was out there to cause problems and to do damage. Hopefully they don't lose this ammonia. Maybe the prosecution will come back and ask questions that'll clear it up, because the defense didn't clear it up that well.
You were out there that evening at the end. You didn't have your Glock, correct?
Correct.
You had borrowed it to Nick Smith?
He told me his name was Nathan, but yes.
You borrowed it to Nick Smith? Did Nick Smith borrow it, or did you lend it to him? You borrowed it to lend... Well, say that again, Mr. Attorney?
Correct?
Correct.
You had borrowed it to Nick Smith?
He told me his name was Nathan, but yes.
Okay. So you were using a pseudonym, false name?
Correct.
Nathan was using a false name?
Yes.
Did he give you a false name, or did he say Kyle Rittenhouse? I'm pointing to my client.
I don't remember if he gave me a pseudonym or not. He went by Kyle most of the night when he was talking to me.
Kyle.
Yep.
You refer to a man and a woman who you always saw with Rosenbaum, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe that man?
He was tall, scraggly looking with a beard.
Okay.
He had like camo shorts on too, I think.
Okay. Do you remember anything about the top?
I can't remember the color of the top specifically.
Yeah.
So now we're going to show him a picture to refresh his recollection on what he was wearing, and then he'll identify him.
Do you remember anything specifically about the woman?
She had a black backpack on. She was a little heavy set, maybe.
Do you remember anything about her hair?
I think it was dyed a bright color, maybe.
Okay. I'll show you pictures, see if you recognize these individuals.
Gee, a flaming liberal burning and rioting with colored hair. Who could have predicted that shit? Ray Charles saw that shit coming. So they still got audio off. What's going on? Wow. They couldn't get it on screen, so he's just going to show them.
Photograph from my associate's computer. Do you recognize anybody in that picture?
The female with the red hair is the one that was accompanying Rosenbaum, and the other male.
Okay. The other male is not in the picture completely, correct?
Correct.
But that is the individual
Yes.
who was with Mr. Rosenbaum. Do you notice anything in his hand?
He's got the handgun in his hand, as usual.
And you might not be able to tell, but with this bar right here, does that tell you where that was?
That's at the Ultimate gas station.
So he showed it to the prosecution so he could verify that it's either an exhibit or they know. I'm surprised he didn't say, maybe they did say it when the thing was off, and identify this as already been exhibit so-and-so and been introduced as evidence, whatever.
And you and my client were present when Mr. Rosenbaum threatened you and Kyle, correct?
Correct.
And he,
Oh, this is going to be good, because that's the key point. He said, I'm going to kill you.
my client were present when Mr. Rosenbaum threatened you and Kyle, correct?
Correct.
And he specifically said if he got either of you alone, he would expletive kill you.
That's correct.
Any doubt about that?
No doubt about that at all.
Told the FBI that?
Yes.
And that was right after, I'm going to get his name wrong, Dustin had put out dumpster fire?
Correct. It was about 20 to 30 minutes before we headed south and the shooting started.
And Mr. Bayer asked you some questions about did he try to attack you at that time? How many guys were there?
There were about 4 or 5 armed men in front of him.
Okay, and there's some other armed men on the roof?
Correct.
That were upsetting him because he...
He seemed to not appreciate armed men.
Okay, and you specifically referred to him, and I wrote the words down, he was a hyper-aggressive individual, correct?
That is correct.
Could you tell me what that means to you?
Every encounter I saw him have with someone was extremely aggressive.
You saw him lighting fires?
Lighting fires, getting in people's faces. Protesters and armed individuals were having to get between him and other people to stop fights from happening.
Did you see him tip over the porta potty?
I didn't witness that.
Okay. Did you see him take rocks out of the St. James rock pile?
He got the rocks he was throwing from somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, so that was a good way. You notice how he got actions of this guy in, even though this guy didn't know it, it's implied that he knocked over a porta potty and he was picking up rocks from a certain location. So even if he doesn't put a witness, this is how attorneys kind of get things in on the sly. Even though he may not have anybody testify about the porta potty now, he's kind of rung that bell to the jury that this guy was violent, crazy, and nothing but a damn troublemaker. And that's good. So he's doing his job. I like where he's going here.
Did you see him involved in taking the trailer out of St. James, taking it down the road and starting it on fire?
I didn't witness that event.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Question?
I guarantee you he's going to clean up the bleach. Watch this.
A couple things, Mr. Balch, and then we'll be done. You testified you gave a statement to the FBI.
Correct.
That was dated.
This is the problem with giving multiple statements when you're on a stand. It's very hard to remember what you told everybody and if your story changed. If any of you give a statement to the police, and then later you give a statement to the FBI, and then later the DEA comes and questions you and you give a statement to them, the odds of those three statements being exact is slim to none and slim left town. So when you give multiple statements, you set yourself up that if you ever get in trial, they're going to say you either lied here or you lied there, or you changed your story here or you changed your story there, or you were not telling the truth here or you weren't telling the truth here, or you just make it. Even though any reasonable person knows when you tell a story, there's going to be small facts that may change, forget, get deleted. You may remember something. They're never going to be exact, which is why anytime you give a statement, you should not give a second statement without having your first statement in front of you. That way you can refresh your recollection, you can look at it, and you can be sure. I mean, I don't even think you ought to give a second statement. I think you ought to say, you know what? I already gave a statement. I got nothing to say. I don't want to talk to anybody. That way, when you get put on the stand, you only have one statement working against you. When you give multiple statements, you will always have multiple statements working against you. Never a good idea. A matter of fact, a common ploy of district attorneys is if a guy gives a really good statement, they will have me, when I was an investigator, go re-interview him and take a second statement. I go, why? I just want to make sure he's clear. Get a second statement from him. And then they might have another investigator. Hey, man, he's been interviewed a couple times, but I'm still unclear. Can you go get another statement from him? So now we have three statements. So if this guy messes up and somehow becomes helpful to the defense, I now have three statements that I can use against them. Say, well, isn't it true you told this officer this, you told this officer that, and you told this officer this? And even though there's no nefarious or malice in your mind when you give them, when you give multiple statements, it always comes back to haunt you. Don't do it to protect yourself. I'm not saying don't do it because you have something to hide. And you know, a lot of people go, I have nothing to hide. I'll talk to the government. It will always be used against you.
August 28th of 2020. Would this sound right to you? Yes?
That sounds correct.
3 days after this incident.
That is correct.
When you spoke to the FBI, what was your intent?
You always know you're about to get something shoved up your butt when the prosecution is being nice and calm and being your friend. Notice how this guy he's, oh, okay, yeah, so you gave this statement? Oh, yeah, and how long? Oh, 3, yeah. Oh, he's about to catch him where he changed his freaking story. Get ready, because it's coming.
3 days after this incident.
That is correct.
When you spoke to the FBI, what was your intent?
Well, I really didn't have any intentions of speaking to the FBI. They just showed up at the house.
That's a good answer. The follow-up answer should have said, I didn't speak to the FBI because I didn't want to give statements and I didn't want to misspeak and have them use it against me. That should have been his answer. But FBI shows up at your house, I guess that the cool thing to do is just talk to him.
I gave them what information I could remember and what I could make sense of. They were very clear with me to only give them the information that I was 100% sure about.
Oh, that's not a good statement. And you know why the FBI said that? Because they can say you were lying. Only give us the information you're 100%. When I interviewed this person, I told him I only wanted 100%. So if he's saying now that he misspoke or he forgot or he wasn't sure, that means he lied to me, because when I interviewed him as an FBI agent, the FBI, I told him, I only want things you're 100%. How many things are we 100% sure about when we're nervous being questioned by the feds? We were just in an incident to where our buddy killed somebody. We know we're going to have to testify. We've been interviewed by the police. We were at an incident trying to protect the community, and we received shots fired. We were hiding. They were blowing up cars around us. Yeah, just give this interview what you're 100% sure about. You know what? I'm 100% sure. I don't want to talk to you. I want a lawyer, and I've got nothing to say. That's what I'm 100% about, and that should be your answer.
Did you withhold any information from them?
No.
Did you?
He said no. He shouldn't say no. This is what I call covering your ass on a stand. He should say, I didn't intentionally hide anything, and I don't recall anything that I held. I mean, I gave him the best of my knowledge at that time, what I remembered, and I was as truthful as I could be. That's the statement, gives you a lot of legal room for when he comes out in a minute here. Didn't you say this? And didn't you just say this? Were you lying then or were you lying now? I mean, I don't know if he's going to say that, but that's normally how it plays out.
To tell them the truth.
Yes.
Were events in your mind clearer 3 days after the incident than they might be now?
See, here he changed his story. I guarantee you can tell where this is going, because he's saying your events were clearer there right now. So the statement you gave them is much more accurate than the statement you gave today because it was closer. That may or may not be true. I talked about how crisis and stress and all that can change that. I don't know when the interview was, but anytime the FBI shows up and interview you, your stress goes up. If your stress doesn't go up around FBI or law enforcement, then you ain't been paying attention.
Even then, the whole situation was kind of a big jumble and I was trying to put timelines together. So I had told them explicitly that my timelines are going to be a little off.
Good. I'm glad he said that. Hopefully they put that in a report. Hopefully the report was videotaped or audio.
I understand that, but do you think your memory of what happened on the night of August 25th was better 3 days later than it is 14 months later?
It would be, yes.
It would be. See, he's given an affirmative thing to where he's locking himself down. He said, I would think it would be, but he goes, there's some facts that came to me later as I recall the incident that I didn't recall closer to the incident. So that could or could not be true. Yeah. See, he's not talking to him this way because he's his friend. He's setting his ass up to fail, and he's trying to make sure and lock him down. So when he does stick this up his butt, everybody on the jury is going to be, oh man, this guy a liar. We can't believe anything he said. Later, when he does his closing, he's going to say, we heard from Mr. Bond, but you remember that he gave the FBI one statement and he lied, and he gave a statement here. So this is why this can hurt a case. Hopefully this guy knows what's coming. He's been in the military and he knows this game, but we'll see.
When you spoke to the FBI, did they identify themselves as the FBI?
Yes.
Did you know you were speaking to law enforcement officials?
Yes.
Did you understand that if you didn't tell them the truth, that could get you in trouble?
Yes.
And you wanted to be completely honest with them?
Yes.
Did you understand that they were asking you questions about homicide?
Yes.
Did you understand that it would be helpful?
Who thinks all these questions he's saying now is because he likes this guy and he wants to give him credibility? Of course not. Anybody with a brain, anybody sitting on the jury going, wow, he's really making sure this guy, was a good guy, and they don't see this big FU coming, man.
To give them as much information as possible about what happened here?
Yes.
Was that what you wanted to do?
Yes.
Did you want to cooperate with them?
Yes.
Did you want to tell them everything that you knew about what happened?
Yes.
Your Honor, objection. I asked and answered. We got it. He talked to the FBI and he was honest. What's the point of these questions? He could have shut him down a little bit earlier, I think.
In your statement, you say, and I'm going to quote.
Of course he's going to quote, because he gets to sit here and read what they wrote. Now, are you quoting from a recorded, transcribed paper, or are you quoting from what the FBI supposedly quoted and wrote down? Because those are two different things.
On page 3 of your statement, Balch stated that this eventual victim, who's Joseph Rosenbaum, was carrying a hospital-style bag with chemicals to make Molotov cocktails. You then say later on that this is on page 4, Balch examined the bag quickly and observed an ammonium mixture and a small bleached bottle. First of all, am I reading your statement to the FBI correctly?
You are.
None of that is true, is it?
It doesn't appear to be, no.
Nowhere in this statement to the FBI did you mention any tall guy with a scraggly beard or a shorter woman with colored hair, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
Well, now the defense ought to come back on that. That wasn't really great points. He said none of that is true. Why isn't it true? What? You can't just leave this hanging to the jury, because the jury's going to be like, did this guy just lie to the prosecutor? See, this is how he leaves this low-hanging fruit of, obviously the guy lied, right? Well, maybe he didn't mention those other people because the FBI didn't ask. This defense attorney ought to be, did the FBI ask you about any other people? No. I asked you about those people today, correct? Yes. Had the FBI asked you that, would you have told them? Hopefully the answer is yes, but hopefully the defense will clean this up.
Are you lying under oath today?
No, they just never asked those questions.
Perfect! I love it! I love it! You would think I'm writing a script. I can't hear his question, but obviously from the answer, he asked, did they ask you?
Nothing further.
Are you lying under oath today?
No, they just never asked those questions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when the FBI talks to you, they don't write out a statement for you and let you review it for accuracy and completeness, do they?
No.
They just ask you questions, they show up to your house unannounced, you answer the questions, they leave, and they write down what they think is important.
That is correct.
I have nothing further.
Oh, see, that's pretty good. I would have went further. Did they record the interview so we actually know what they said? No. See, I would make the FBI look incompetent or look like they're lying. He could have went a couple steps further and went, do you know why they didn't record? When you gave an interview to the police, did they record your statement? Yeah. So we know what they said and is backed up by recording. Did the FBI record when they? No. So the only record we have of what you supposedly told the FBI is what they wrote down, and what the district attorney is now reading has fact, but we don't have any audio that was recorded to support those facts, do we? And he went, I don't know, or I'm not, it doesn't matter. I want the jury to connect those freaking dots. These defense attorneys are not really what I consider being pro-client and really educating the jury on the bullshit. I'm assuming that's over.
Okay, folks, let's break for the day, and please...
Alrighty, so I missed this interview. I'll add it in there. Now, I don't know, this interview number might be different and out of thing. I'll put in the description if you want to watch this right after this guy testifies so you can watch it in order. I'll put in the description the exact number, but I'm going to keep these numbered the same way that I've been numbering so you can kind of follow chronologically. All right, we'll end that there.